Hi, I'm Mark from Triton Tools. Today we're going to be looking through the TSPL152 surface planer setup and assembly. This video won't be a feature walkthrough or about the use of the tool. So when taking the tool out of the box, have a look back just to make sure that one of the feet hasn't gotten caught in the packaging. If a foot's come off, it's an easy fix. Just lift the tool up and place it in with a long edge to the front or the back face and drop it down. So as with any new power tool out of the box, you want to just check that everything's there, that nothing is damaged, and that every bolt that should be tight is tight. And before you go anywhere near the blade, make sure you've got a good set of gloves as well to protect your fingers. And while hex keys are provided, it'd be good to have your own set just in case. So the first thing you want to do is attach the carry handles to the end. This will make this easier to manoeuvre during the build, and you have more access before the fence and blade drum guard go on. The carry handles, 2 of them, look like that. Are using 4 M8 30mm hex screws with washers. So after making sure that the blades are not visible, I'd recommend turning the tool towards you on its front so that you don't pinch the cable. Start with one of the handles, one of the screws, and locate it with your fingers initially. Place it through the hole and find that thread. Now I recommended the top one because this way you can place the hex key into the bolt and simply rotate it until this side is tight. Once the first one is nearly tight, it's time to locate the second. Find the thread with your fingers, then carry on with the hex key. You may have to do half or quarter turns here just because of the access. Now for the other side, it's exactly the same. There is no left or right handle. And give each a final tighten as well once you're done on both sides before you try moving the tool using the handles. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we start with the fence mounting bracket. This machine side up attaches to the bracket mount here. Put it in place and locate the holes, and using 2 M8 20mm screws, pop those in and locate the thread. Now you'll be using the same hex screw as for the handles that we've just installed. So make sure you keep that handy. Now before you tighten this fully, being the structural part that this is, you're going to want to make sure the bolts are nice and tight, but you also want to make sure that this is level to the table. And once you're comfortable that's level, just give the bolts one last push. There we are. So take the shorter of the 2 fence locking handles, apply the 10mm spacer, and take your fence locking plate, it's this one here, with the dovetail, to marry this second dovetail over here, pins at the bottom, place it up through the underneath of the tool, and locate it against that edge there. Holding it in place, take your shorter fence locking handle and simply start winding that in. Not so that it's fully tight, but so that it's tight enough to hold itself in place. Now both of these fence locking handles are spring loaded, so that if when tightening it would contact another part of the tool, you simply pull the handle out, twist it round to relocate it, and continue tightening. On the far side of the fence locking plate, there's this bolt here, should you need to adjust the fence locking plate forward or backward to keep it steady with the tool. You simply tighten it to where you want it to be, and then tighten the nut that's on the bolt. So next we're going to need to attach the fence to the fence sliding bracket. You're going to be using 2 M6 25mm screws, and these will come already in the fence. So you need to remove those using the hex key provided. Make sure when you're doing this, you retain the small spring washers that are on these bolts. You can identify the top of the fence by the warning labels stuck to the top, and the chamfered edge is the bottom. There are two sets of magnets. These bottom two are for holding the blade drum guard when the blade is not in active use. This one locates the stop block on the back of the fence. If you need to move the fence left or right relative to the centre of the tool, you can undo these bolts or loosen these bolts and slide this bracket left or right. This piece here is the fence sliding bracket. It consists of an arm to move the fence to the desired angle, a spindle which you'll attach the fence to, a sliding red blade drum guard to protect you from the blade when it's not in active use, two stops to align the fence at 45 degrees. So to attach the fence to the fence sliding bracket, I've put it on a 45 to make it easier to see. I'm going to move the arm over. So the spindle on the arm has two sides, one with a larger hole and one with a smaller hole. When placing the bolts in to attach the fence, you want to place them into the larger side first. Make sure the spring washer is there, because if you place them in the shorter side, the bolt simply won't be long enough to attach in the fence. And just get them going in on both sides before tightening them up with the provided hex key. You're going to want to make sure these are pretty tight. In general use of the tool, you should always make sure that the blade drum guard is located on the magnets on the back of the fence and will cover the part of the blade not in use. This should move freely, but if it doesn't, you can always adjust it using the bolts in the base here. This part of the fence sliding bracket is the stop block and stop block handle. The stop block has two indentations, one for 90 degrees and one for moving the fence to 45 degrees. You locate these by lifting the stop block handle, sliding the stop block into place and letting it locate in the indentation, and it will also connect to the back of the tool on the magnet. It's time to put your newly assembled fence structure onto the fence mounting bracket. We'll locate it in the two dovetails from earlier, the one machined into the right over here and the loose one here. Place the fence down. Once you're happy with the fence's placement, you can tighten it in place using the handle we left loose earlier. The final part of the fence assembly is to put the fence angle locking handle, that's the longer one of these two, through the hole into the thread at the other side. This is where the spring mechanism on the locking handles comes into use. As mentioned earlier, we're not going to be going through the use and the features of the tool today, but I am going to show you how to adjust the fence to the 90. We set it to 90 at the factory. It's best to check it yourself using an engineer's square, as it may have moved during transit. If your fence does need adjustment, you can loosen this bolt here to move the stop on the stop block forward or backward. Likewise, there are adjustable bolts here and here for your 45 and your 135 degree angles. Now before we put the blade drum guard on, we're going to check that the blades are aligned. We do this at the factory, but it's worth checking before you turn the tool on. To do this, you go under the infeed table here, rotate the infeed table knob anti-clockwise to lower the table, and rather than touching the blade drum itself, we'd recommend taking this cover off here using the tool provided, and lifting this cover up once the bolts are out will expose the belt, and you can then turn the blade drum without touching the blades. What you want to do is loosen the fence and rotate it out of the way. Best just lock it in place where it is so it doesn't move while we're doing this. Rotate the drum using the belt so that the blade is at its apex, at the tallest point. Take your straight edge and place it flat on the outfeed table, not the infeed table. And the blades should just come in contact with the straight edge as the drum rotates. Now it's best to do this on the inner, the middle and the outside of the drum. Just check the blade's perfectly flat. Well, this one's close enough, but just for my own sake, I'm going to give it a little adjustment on this side to untighten the 4 bolts that hold the blade in place. You don't want to undo them, you just want to untighten them. Rotate the blade so that the bolts to align the blade are visible. What you want to do is you want to rotate the tool anti-clockwise to move the blade up, or clockwise to move the blade down. Now of course I'm exaggerating this so that you can see it happening. Once you're happy with the blade's position, rotate the drum back and tighten the same 4 bolts using the tool provided so that the blade's not going to move anywhere. Repeat this process of both blades on the drum. Once you're happy with their position, replace the belt cover and put the screws back in place too. We'll now be attaching the blade drum guard to the guard arm before it goes on the tool. There are 2 M6 bolts and nuts already in the guard arm. To remove the nuts from those, make sure the bolts remain in the tool. Locate them through the holes on the blade drum guard and attach the nuts back in place. Now using your fingers or the spanner provided, locate the nuts onto the bolts and tighten these so that the blade drum guard is not coming away from the blade arm. Next we're attaching the blade guard to the tool using the 2 13x20mm bolts and spring washers. The larger side of the spanner provided will help you tighten these. Last thing left to do is to run the tool. I found this pretty gnarly piece of wood here. It's got a good bow in one side and not a very square edge. We did this side and the top side there. Okay, so what we've got now is a perfectly square piece of wood. You see how gnarly that was before. So there we have it. I hope this helped you get your tool set up and ready to use. Let us know in the comments what you want to see next, and we'll catch you in the next one.